Knon 89.3 FM in Dallas and Fort Worth, the voice of the people.
Business owners, tell KNON's listeners about your business. You can put your business or event on KNON. KNON currently has space available to run announcements for you. Tell KNON's listeners about your goods, services, nightclub, concert, or event. Help keep the voice of the people on the air while putting your information on the air. KNON's been named the #1 radio station in Dallas by both the Dallas Observer and D Magazine. Put your business with Dallas's #1 station. Call now for more information at 214-828-9500, extension 227, or extension 233. For more information, go to knon.org and click on the Run Spots on KNON page. It's a great way for your business to support community radio while letting more people know about you.
What a game! What a game!
Get off my lawn.
Jim Schutze back with the get off my Eric, do you lawn. Eric Celeste is here to help me out too with a number of issues. This is the show where we talk about what's really going on in Dallas, and we have a bunch to talk about today. Eric, if you don't mind, at the very top, I got to take care of some personal business. The last time you and I were on the air, I made a remark about a guy at DISD who's the acting auditor for the district, Alan King. And I said he was the guy who presided over a huge financial goof in 2008.
Right.
And I had the wrong guy in my head, absolutely. Alan King didn't come to the district until 2011. He has a distinguished record at the district. He came in, I think, as CFO originally. He's been an acting superintendent. He cleared up a bunch of just bad management practices when he came, stuff like something to do with district employees renting out district space.
Right.
He got rid of some goofy management practice that was costing the district $2.5 million a year for no reason. But the main thing he did was he was the architect of the rebound in the district's reserve fund, which they had almost burned up.
Yeah, and I was a bad editor because I didn't say anything. But
you knew that I was.
It blinked in my head, and I said, "Jim knows what he's talking about. I won't say anything."
Please,
I must be wrong.
Please never assume that. Please, never again.
This is why this show needs to be on like 4-hour delay. Right?
Yeah, that's right. Maybe 4-week delay, so we can do some research. But I'm going to call Mr. King this week and apologize personally. I apologize to readers for getting it wrong. Alan King is not the guy who was the architect of the district's financial goof in 2008. He didn't come until 3 years later, and that's my mistake.
Right. He's a change agent, and so far as we know, a good one.
Yeah. So moving on. Here's because you know more about Craig Watkins than I do, our district attorney.
Okay, I would agree to that.
And
most of it I can't talk about. But
yeah, because you've worked for him on a campaign.
Yes,
in the past, and I'm just curious what, as a political watcher, you think is going on here in terms of the politics of our district attorney, who's been in the news this week over a complicated deal having to do with his contempt of court in a hearing where he refused to testify. Is my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong,
and it is confusing. I might not know, but I'll try.
In this deal where he was supposed to testify, and it has to do with the Al Hill case, Lisa Blue, a bunch of money, he sent his own staff to testify.
They were there to, as I recall, to argue why he didn't need to testify.
Okay. He had them in there on the stand talking.
And they eventually got on the stand, right?
And they were talking, which we call testifying.
Right. At first, his lawyer was arguing that he didn't need to.
Yeah.
It was a bad precedent, right? And then eventually others testified on his behalf.
Yeah.
And then he didn't.
Then he said he's not
going to, didn't show up, and was held in contempt, right?
Well, the insider talk I get from the courthouse is from people who are talking about the lawyering of this. And they're saying if your principle is that the district attorney's office doesn't have to testify on this stuff, then then nobody from the district attorney's office testifies. But you can't have it both ways. You can't have people go in, try a story on the court, and then if that doesn't work, you say, well, no, I personally don't have to.
Right. That's and that I don't know. And if the lawyer, it makes sense to me.
Yeah.
But what I do know is that from my time, I worked for Craig just on the political campaign. Right when I left D Magazine to sort of be a consultant and try my hand at that, and didn't plan on doing politics. But the day after I decided to do this, I got a call and was asked if I would work on the campaign. And
would you, just in case we have a listener from out of town who doesn't know who Craig Watkins is, can you sort of paint who he is in terms of local politics?
Yeah, and for me, at that point, I mean, this was it still 2009, I believe? Yeah. And, he had, when he came in and was elected, it was a shock to everybody, Craig Watkins included. And that he had spent, as a matter of fact, the last 2 weeks of the campaign when he ran pretty much just on his couch, not doing anything because he really didn't have any more money and nobody thought that was going to happen. And he rode that big wave of Dallas turning blue in the Obama election, and was so he took that seat, and then he came in and immediately sort of turned that office, and you would know this better than I do, was sort of seen as the old school district attorney's office that was great if you had a certain amount of, protected you if you had a certain amount of money, and lived on the right side of the river.
But did nothing for a long time about the fake drug scandal and so on.
So he came in and wanted to change that, and and I've talked to him about this, he was very passionate about changing the way people viewed the DA's office, and that no matter who you were, no matter how much money you had, no matter the color of your skin, you had somebody looking out for your safety at the district attorney's office. And he did that in a lot of ways, most notably sort of aligning himself with the Innocence Project and the folks that were DNA testing people on death row to get them to prove they were wrongly convicted and get them released. And because of that, brought a lot of attention to himself, to the district attorney's office, and was seen as a very modern sort of district attorney, and somebody who embraced what they call, which I really hate this name, but I think it's called smart crime approach or something like that. I always hated the name.
Sounds like a contradiction in terms.
Right, which meant we want to lock up criminals, but we want to make sure they're criminals and do so in a more a fairer manner than they have in the past. And so because of that, people like me, your knee-jerk liberals especially, loved him.
And he had a huge amount of national
press. He was on the Colbert Show. And I pushed for this story. Zach Crane at D Magazine wrote a cover story that the original title, which we weren't allowed to put on the cover, was American Badass. And that was and a big shot at him, but we ended up saying, a very praising cover story on the work he was doing and how hard it was, because he was trying to change an entire culture at the district attorney's office. So I went into this extremely excited, and still believe to this day that Craig Watkins has the best intentions, and the things he wants to do and has done and still wants to do with the district attorney's office, and the way it conducts its business is the right way to do it. So I went into that, met Craig, passed whatever test I needed to pass, and was on the campaign as a communications consultant. And went through up until just before the election, when I left about 30 days before the election. So got to see sort of the inner workings of the political team, and how it also fought with and butted up heads against his people that he surrounded himself with at the district attorney's office. So that's a lot of background, but what what I see is none of this surprises me, because what started to happen was you had a group of people whose intention was to make sure Craig continued to be elected, and that the best things about what he did were he was known for, and that any of these other sort of scandals, that a lot of which we felt that his office, and by extension Craig, were bringing upon himself, that he stopped doing these self-destructive things we saw as self-destructive, and that he concentrated on the things he really cared about and the things that people loved about him.
And characterize the stuff he was doing that was self-destructive. I mean,
well, there's the constable scandal was going on at the time, and there were and actually you wrote more about that. I had come back in right at the end of this, so you might be better at summarizing what was going on there than I am. But there was, he was out there refusing to bring charges against these constables. And do you want to summarize the?
Well, I guess my summary would be that here's this guy with this national promise,
right,
and he's getting tugged into this South Dallas politics of defending these guys who've got all kinds of problems of their own,
right,
and so. Is Craig Watkins the kind of guy, should he be the kind of guy who can say to the old buddies from southern Dallas, hey, man, I'm off on my own road now. I'm not going to be in your stuff.
And what we were trying to tell him was, yes, you can. Our polling was coming back showing that, look, you poll higher in what we call the base, in South Dallas,
right,
in liberal areas of the city, you poll higher than anyone that our poller, and this is a guy who was out of San Francisco and had done many national campaigns, higher than anyone he had ever seen. Something like 98% approval rate, and higher than John Wiley Price in South Dallas. You don't need to be beholden to that South Dallas political machine,
or tied up in
it at all. And he got that, but it's a complicated thing. And the problem I found, this is my opinion, was that whenever his office was under attack, the lawyers around him who wanted to close ranks,
right,
advised him to ignore us.
The media
ignored us. His political advisors.
Ignore you guys inside.
Oh yeah, no, we didn't. We were sort of seen as giving him bad advice. No, you don't ignore all that. You don't acquiesce, because our argument was, do what you need to do, tie this off with a bow, move on, and be seen as the person who locks up the bad guys with your conviction rate,
right,
and lets out innocent people. There's no better brand than that.
Yeah.
And you already have it. You've established it.
Right.
All you're doing is eroding it by getting involved in these politics and in fighting with the commissioner's court. And the commissioner's court would drag him into these battles, and he could not help himself. And I believe that's also because the people around him said, if you let them run over you, you're showing weakness. And you can't show weakness to the commissioner's court or to any of these other local entities, or the media. He saw them as, an enemy. And like most lawyers, they think not only can they do their job better than you, but they can do your job better than you. And so that was and he began to surround himself and close ranks with people who advised him to do that. And I see that pattern getting more and more, happening over and over again over the years since then.
Well, that would indicate that he's not a guy who has his own compass, then.
I think he had some really, he had some really smart people around him who, when I first came on, I said, wow, these are sharp folks. I would listen to them. They know where the bodies are buried. They know the inner working. They've been at the courthouse for years and years and years. So I listened to them too. And it was only over time that I started to think, what I think they believe is in his best interests and their best interests, it just eroded at his credibility. And I think all he wanted to do, any conversation I ever had, was get back to talking about the things that were important to him. And he wasn't able, though, to see that by feeding the fire, that he was unable to of controversy day to day that prevented him from doing so.
Especially where media are concerned, there's stuff that people who haven't dealt with the media before, with the news media, don't get. But you're supposed to figure it out after a while. I mean, we in the news business, we are kind of a primitive hunter-gatherer society. And the reporters are the hunters. And that's a great job. Everybody else has to stay back in the village and sharpen arrowheads. But
right.
We get to go hunt, but we have to bring meat back at the end of the day. And so you can't say to the reporters, there's no story here. You're not going to do a story, because we are going to do some story.
Yeah. You have one side saying he's doing X wrong.
Yeah.
You've got enough for a story.
Right. Yeah.
There's either
right
a no
there.
comment or you engage in it. And you know, we felt as though he spent way too much time engaging, and he's a guy who is like a lot of people, but he hadn't taken that route where he learned how to turn that off and ignore it.
Right.
And he was, you know, fairly obsessed with the way he was being portrayed, and he felt unfairly in the media. And you're reinforced because, again, your base and the rest of the South Dallas group and the Democratic political folks in town would feed into your
Sure.
insecurity and say, no, they are after you, Craig. They are out to get you. You've got to fight. And they didn't see that all you're doing then is preaching to the converted. And you're not helping yourself with folks who want to believe in you.
Right.
In other areas of town.
Part of it that seemed really crazy to me. I wouldn't blame anybody from a political background in southern Dallas for believing that the North Dallas crowd are out to get them.
Right.
But there was a point in the budget wars when he was almost accusing Commissioner John Wiley Price of a kind of racist attack on his budget.
When they were cutting 23 positions
Yeah.
from him. Okay, I was there during this. So this is very sensitive to me because I can tell you exactly what happened. I went to bed one night before he was going to talk to the commissioners the next day. And, you know, he had said, I don't care about what this does to me. I really, truly believe that they are slicing away my ability to effectively put away criminals and protect the innocent. I believe that. And so when you talk about that moral compass, I mean, you would have conversations with him where you would look at it and go, okay, you want to fight. You want to get out there and fight the commissioners. It's not good for you to, because the people you're trying to convert just see you as the big 6'4" angry district attorney out there fighting with people.
For money.
For money.
Yeah.
But okay, you believe in this passionately. Let's, you know, think about it and do it this way. Go out there and fight for what you can get. Do it. Position it as a public service, which he believed. Mm-hmm. You make sure that you're not making this personal, and that you position it as a public service fight. And he did that. And they agreed to, I'm going to get my numbers wrong, but it was something like 23 total positions to eliminate, and they said, you've saved 19 of them, or whatever it was. He had people come in. And
huge victory.
Huge victory. And we were beside ourselves. So we went to bed, and he was going to go. I went to bed thinking he's going to get up at 9 a.m. and talk to the commissioner's court and say, listen, I'm not happy about those 3 positions we don't have, but we came a long way. You made a sacrifice. We'll meet a little bit in the middle. I'd like to keep all of them.
I really won.
Right. Because you did. But you were going to be magnanimous and move forward. And my phone started blowing up, and you know, like it did every morning, it seemed like. Oh no, things are going wrong. And I find out, no, he had, again, the people around him, and I know this to be true. You know, the folks in that office had said, you can't give in. You're on the 3. On the 3.
Oh my word!
You're losing if that happens. And he went in there, and he got pretty riled up. And that was the day where all the TV stations, the story the next day was him yelling at Maureen Dickey, and Maureen Dickey yelling back at him,
and him looking like a loser,
and it was snatching. It was snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. That was the sort of thing that I feel he can get, you know, very focused on that day's argument and winning those small battles, and not seeing what that's doing overall to his ability to coalesce people who want to believe in him and believe in his mission. And I think that's what's happening now.
Well,
and I have no inside information. I just see the pattern.
I could go back to Bill Hill. Bill Hill got beat up on for being an arrogant old white guy, and in fact, Bill Hill did some stuff at the end about the fake drug scandal and so on. But he was stubbornly tied to his friends and supporters. And I guess my point is nobody's perfect, and it's easy to pull these things apart. What effect does all of this have, do you think, on Watkins's electability?
Well, I believe we saw in the last election what happens when you ignore everyone who's, our advice was, and it was.
Well, I think we're about to go for a break. Hey,
Well,
will you
go.
hold this
Yeah.
thought, and we'll come back to it.
Business owners, tell KNON's listeners about your business. You can put your business or event on KNON. KNON currently has space available to run announcements for you. Tell KNON's listeners about your goods, services, nightclub, concert, or event. Help keep the voice of the people on the air while putting your information on the air. Put your business with Dallas's #1 station. Call now for more information at 214-828-9500, extension 227, or extension 233. For more information, go to knon.org and click on the Run Spots on KNON page. It's a great way for your business to support community radio while letting more people know about you.
When they're gone for good. This is Scott from KNON's Texas Blues Radio telling you don't miss out on some great blues. KNON's Texas Blues Radio Volume 5 Blues CD. It's a CD put together by real blues fans for real blues fans like you. Texas Blues Radio Volume 5 features great local blues from Michael J. and the Paul Bird Band, JJ and the Detonators, the Chris Watson Band, the Two Tones, Rough Cut Blues Band, Jeff Stone with Charlie Love, Dave Millsap, Sirloin and the Ass-Kicking Machine, Tutu Jones, Blues Boy Bo, Buddy Whittington, Andrea Dawson, Kirkland James, Sonny Colley, and Johnny Red and the Roosters. Get a copy now at Forever Young Records in Grand Prairie, Recordtown in Fort Worth, and in Dallas at Bill's Records. This is a Dallas Blues collector's item. A very limited amount of vinyl copies can be found at Forever Young Records, the sponsor of this great blues project. CD downloads are available at cdbaby.com. Whether you get it as a download, on vinyl, or on CD, all the proceeds will benefit KNON. For more info on Texas Blues Radio Volume 5, visit knon.org.
I don't know. Yeah, here we are, Jim Schutze and Eric Celeste. We've been talking about Craig Watkins, and just before we went to the break, you were kind of in the middle of a
talking about politically.
Yeah, what's going to happen?
This
with him.
will happen. In the last election, we felt as though he was going to win. It was going to be tight-ish, but that he would win if he did a couple of things, and one was basically it was stay out of the news for the sort of things, for the Constable scandal and the other sort of things that he was in the news about. Just do press conferences when you were prosecuting somebody, high-profile cases, and that's pretty much it.
Right.
And maybe you would do one debate, stay out of it, and you would win pretty handily because the only thing he could do is erode at his numbers. And he set about, again, I think with a lot of bad advice, to doing battles day to day with commissioners, court, and everybody else, and set about, and those numbers started to erode. So I think he won, with the smallest margin of any big name Democrat on the ballot in Dallas County. So
right, he trailed the ticket.
Yes.
Instead of being the star.
Instead of bringing the ticket with him.
Yeah. Which
is how we all saw him, and he saw himself. He trailed the ticket, and I think he blamed us, the advisors, and everyone else for running a bad campaign. I had left 30 days before the campaign ended for a lot of reasons, primary of which I didn't think I was really being listened to anymore from that standpoint, so it was sort of irrelevant. And that meant that he did everything wrong and still got elected, in my view.
Yeah.
And so, I think that's similar to me. That was worst case scenario. And his candidate did pretty much Danny Clancy did pretty much everything right. He was kind of a blank slate. There was nothing much to attack. We attacked what we could, and so I think that was best case scenario for a lot of folks. Again, that what happens is, and you can speak to this, because there is a history, especially in Dallas County, of business interests of North Dallas versus South Dallas, however you want to characterize it, not being, going after folks who threaten the status quo. And I'm not saying recent history, but a history. Then it is easy to paint this as they're out to get me, and they're out to get me because I'm changing the system, and because I've upset the old boy way of doing things. By the way, we loved. I think I said the old boy network every time they got me on camera. Because it's very effective, and and it paints a picture of something that used to be true that's still very effective in galvanizing people to say, well, he's under attack because he's doing the right thing.
Right. And it galvanizes not just African Americans or Hispanics, it galvanizes tons of white people too.
Yes.
Progressives, people who just believe that the town has been run like a old pre-civil rights movement southern city.
And there's some, and you've written about this, there's some notion that says, okay, well, and I'm not saying, and this is much more of a procedural problem, but if there was some sort of, I'm not saying there was, but if there was something that shouldn't have happened between Lisa Blue and Craig Watkins in the Al Hill case, the reaction to people would be, well, so he's done what everyone else in this town has done for 30 or 40 years.
Yeah. I want to invite listeners to call up. We're at 972-647-1893, 972-647-1893. But the thing is, Eric, in this latest scenario, he's gotten himself between the world's richest lady lawyer, Lisa Blue,
right,
and the Hunt.
Huge former supporter.
Yeah.
And may still be, but I don't know. But gave a lot of money to his last campaign.
The Hunt Hill family, the
Right.
world's biggest gobs of money, don't know what to do with it family.
Right.
And I'm a little lost on where he is politically with this.
Well, the problem, you've hit on it, is not, I think, in his numbers. It's in fundraising. This is where the money comes from, right? And rich money begets rich money.
Right.
And if people stop giving, everyone's asking the rich folks in town for money all day, every day. If they can find a reason not to give it, they'll take it.
Yeah.
And someone who was as big a supporter as Lisa Blue, getting in the middle of this is the sort of reason to give all those other people that were called on over and over and over again to say, I'm going to sit this one out.
Right. I think
maybe I won't write that $5,000 check.
Yeah. I think you got Lisa on your side, Craig. Maybe you don't need money.
Right. And certainly it doesn't hurt in terms of the cascading effect through that community of folks who will give lots of money to Democratic campaigns.
The thing that's been in the paper this week is a woman who's now been sacked from the county, who was in some kind of job trouble, who's claimed that she went to a lunch during a training program in Fort Worth, went to a Subway, so nobody was drunk, I will assume. And
big assumption.
Went with Judge Lena Lovario, and Lovario leans over to this woman Lovario's a judge. She's a very savvy lawyer. She was one of the investigators of the fake drug thing, so she knows where the bones are. She knows how things work.
I remember Rod Davis from D Magazine profiled her in, I want to say, 1989 or 90 or 91, something like that.
Right.
So she's been around.
And is a really smart sort of comer in politics. She's a judge. According to this accusation, she leans over at Subway to this lower-level county employee and says, "I'm going to serve up Craig Watkins's head on a silver platter."
Right, which just doesn't sound like the Lavario we know.
Wow, yeah, right? that would be
Forget what whether she thought that or not. It doesn't sound like the person we know who's smart enough not to say that to somebody sitting who works for the county.
Yeah, I would think that what's more likely is if the employee says, "What do you think of Craig Watkins?" Lavario thinks, "Uh-oh, somebody trying to get me."
Yeah,
on the record.
I got to be careful how I say this so I don't out anybody. Yeah. There's a person who's worked for the district attorney's office for decades, and that person said, one of the things that has happened is there's a feeling within the courthouse that retribution will come if you step out of line in some fashion, and that everyone's a possible snitch, and that there's no trust anymore.
Retribution will come from Watkins.
Yes, maybe not personally, but that someone will have a conversation with you. And we saw that, and I don't remember the details, but right after the last election, you remember some folks were let go who were people who were had attended Republican fundraisers and these sort of things. Yeah, and they felt like that was the reason, and whether it was or not, I know that mood runs through the courthouse.
And it came across as paranoid and petty.
Yes.
Because those were people with long careers of... Well, in this latest deal, what this looks like, and now there's been more testimony, and other people who were in the subway at lunch said, well, we didn't hear anything like that. This is all an effort to force Lavario to be removed, to recuse herself, which she's refused to do.
For the contempt hearing, right?
For the contempt hearing. And it looks like just ham-fisted, transparent, somebody grabbing this employee and twisting her arm and saying, go out, we need you to put some dirt on the judge.
That's what it looks like. I mean, who knows, right? But it is... I know that... Well, I don't want to speak out of turn. The self-preservation instinct running through there, to do whatever needs to be done because you felt like you were under attack all the time from evil outside forces. Yeah, that was prevalent, back in 09-10, and it probably is today. And what that means, I can't speak to, but it is why people. A lot of whom, like I said, have supported have supported Craig Watkins, his office, and the things that I know he holds dear. Disappoints them because whether or not he's behind any of it, it distracts from and it inhibits his ability to do the things that we thought were great about his office. Yeah,
it really it's terrible because it as you say, it takes it erodes the basic legitimacy of what he's trying to do. We have Tony on line 2. Tony, are you still there?
Hello, how y'all doing?
Good, how are you?
All right.
What's up?
My position on Craig Watkins is that it seems as though he's not really charismatic, or when he's in front of a camera, he's not fluid or comfortable, and that in of itself is a bad image for him. Number 2 is that it seems as though he got in office, and that was more of the news, more or less putting a slant on it. He had some little personal issues that make you question his credibility. And you would think after being elected the first time that you correct those exceptions. And right now, he might win again, no question. But to me, he has nowhere else to go inside of politics because he seems like someone who is not reassured, and he don't reassure people. With all the good intentions he has, it seems as though he just, the camera makes him nervous, and also I think the reporters, sometimes you tell reporters something, they write what they hear, It might not be what you said.
Yeah.
But, and then all of a sudden, I didn't say that, or he left this out. And sometimes with the media, it's kind of like, should I talk to him or should I deal with him? And then they kind of do their own little slant, how their perspective is on Craig,
well, sure.
on whoever else in office. It's not for anything else.
There's a lot of slant, and I believe in coverage this week in the morning news, I saw a reference to a feud between Judge Lavario and Watkins. I'm sure Judge Lavario would say, I'm not involved in a feud. I'm involved in a court case. You know. Yeah,
and I felt like the disappointing thing for me was when I came on board and started trying to help direct communications and media coverage and dealing with the media. I did feel like I'll give you an example of what I think is that sort of slant you're talking about. Craig did an interview with the very good courthouse reporter Jennifer Emily, and I sat in on it, and it was at Cafe Brazil at 3:00 in the afternoon, and he talked about his change of heart on death penalty cases. Okay, now this is something that he just did not believe in the death penalty, right? And then he dealt with a case, well, I'm going to get the details wrong, but a very young girl was killed, and after talking to the family and going through the case, they went ahead and advocated for the death penalty. And it was very emotional for him, and he talked a little bit about it after the verdict. This was months later, and some people worried that this was designed to make him look weak if he talked about how he was personally against the death penalty, right? In your North Dallas, possible swing,
right,
but yet conservative voters. And so he talked about that, and he talked about very personally how that affected him. Now, that had already been mentioned at the end of that story months earlier in the court case story. She said it was going to run in conjunction with another death penalty case that was coming up. That case got moved, so the story got held. Flash forward 6 weeks. I wake up, on the front page of the morning news is a story, Watkins flip-flops on death penalty.
Yeah, I remember that.
That was the headline. I flipped out. So I call up Jennifer. Hey, it was sitting in the queue. It showed up today. I'm sorry. She didn't apologize on behalf of her, but she was just telling me what happened.
Right.
So I called that. So Mike Hashimoto from the editorial board,
right,
who has it out for Craig and doesn't appreciate what he does, and I know Mike from a long time ago, was going to he had written a lot of the pieces and blog posts that slapped him around for constables and everything else, and he was going to do it again. And I said, Mike, just do me one favor. Go ask the editors when that interview was done. That is not news, and they fabricated that as news. If it was 6 weeks ago, if it was done yesterday, fine. If it was shocking front page and flip-flop news, right, why did it sit in a queue for 6 weeks? In the morning news, and he ended up not writing it. He said, "You're right. I'm not going to write that." That's when I think the process, and that's just hey, we got a news hole. An editor sees a story and says, "I can put a spin on it and stick it on the front page," and that has reverberations far beyond that. So I get that. Really, just that sort of stuff, and that happened a lot more with TV than it did in the paper. Really disappointed me. But that said, Tony is right. Craig is great in person and has trouble when you turn the camera on.
I think we have a break coming up, and we'll be back, and I want to come back to this issue of what it's like to be on the other end of the stick from the media when you've been a reporter yourself. It's interesting. Humbling.
Very much so.
And, yeah.
If it's time to get rid of your old gas guzzler, the Knon Vehicle Donation Program can help. There's still a market for those old vehicles, and if you donate it, you're helping to support quality programming here on KNON. Just call 877-KNON-AUTO or go online to knon.org. We'll take care of everything from pickup to tax paperwork. That's 877-KNON-AUTO or online at knon.org.
Jim Schutze and Eric Celeste back with Get Off My Lawn. I think we're back. And Eric was telling some really, really very interesting stuff about being on the other end of the stick from the reporters and media and representing Craig Watkins in these areas. And it is every journalist should have some experience where you're on the other end of the stick. For me, it was when I wrote true crime books, and at least back in the area where the crime happened, I would get interviewed, TV and radio and stuff about the book. And wow, it's very humbling. One of the things that I realized was that you get interviewed by a guy, and he has an assignment from his editor: do a story about that nutcase from Texas who wrote that BS book.
Right.
And so the question is, would you say that you're a nutcase from Texas who wrote a BS book? And you rebut it, and then you get the same question back 8 times, barely. And so you realize, oh, this guy's not moving off the dime. He has an assignment, and he's going to write that story. Anyway, it's very... it really gives you, does it not, an additional perspective to be in?
Very much so. And, no one made fun of PR people more than I did. I went right from school into journalism, and, I didn't know I was right at the end of the heyday. I thought I was right at the beginning. I didn't know I was...
You may have contributed to that trend.
I'm a cooler. And in Vegas terms, I'm a cooler. But it's I date I date a PR person now who deals with the media and in high-profile fashion, and I can't talk about any of it. What she has to go through. It infuriates me.
Right.
I just want to. It's unbelievable sometimes, especially television. I mean, I have no problem really throwing them under the bus. Talk about. I mean, they've got their story to do. They want to get done by 5. It's better if you don't comment, because that's less work they have to do.
Right.
And I'll get a story up, and if you don't like it, it's really not my problem. That is the attitude. And as somebody who always defended the media on the other side, to be on the side where you have to deal with that.
Right.
To figure out how. I'll give you a quick story. So I got a phone call when I was working for Craig, and it was from someone at Channel 5, and it was someone who's in charge of their it's a behind-the-scenes person producer who's in charge of their investigative stuff. And so my girlfriend said, "Oh, that person, watch out," And I said, "What?" I'm just calling back to see what they. It's not like. So I call back and I ask for this person. This person gets on the phone and just starts yelling at me. How does Craig? Why? Why would Craig Watkins dare to try to influence by calling me right now at this hour? And we're working on a story, and I don't have time to talk. If he wants to talk, he can talk on camera. And I long day. I didn't need that, so I just flipped out and started screaming back at her. That you're the one that called.
Yeah.
I have no idea what this is about. Why are you coming in with that attitude? Why are you taking some sort of journalism seminar you're giving me here? It's 7:00 on a Thursday. Just tell me what story you're doing, and I'll tell you if we're going to comment or not. And backed off. But what it told me, and what my girlfriend, knowing that I was walking into that trap told me, that there are some people out there who just feel like I can do and say and act any way I want to the subjects,
and don't mess up my
narrative and my narrative.
Yeah,
and it really disappointed me that that's true, because I've always believed those were just people who were sort of complaining. We're probably in the wrong. They were nailed by the media, and it's made me look at things in a whole new light. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't some flags out there spinning stuff that's ridiculous. What it does mean is that there are people out there trying to get their side of a story who aren't listened to.
Yeah, it's certainly changed me in that every once in a while somebody will say to me, I've got a big problem coming up, and how do you think I should deal with the media? And I find myself saying, hire a pro.
Exactly.
Don't do this. Is brain surgery.
Let me tell you again. I'll credit this. I went to people who knew what they were doing. And if you saw me during the Craig Watkins race on television, you heard me say, well, you didn't hear it but if you saw the unedited interview, you saw me say the same 3 or 4 things over and over and over, like an idiot, like some sort of dummy, on your arm, because the pros were right. If I said anything else, anything off message,
right.
If I didn't sound like a parrot,
Yeah.
and just make my key messages
Yeah.
over and over and over,
Yeah.
no telling what was going to end up on the evening news.
Yeah.
And they would get frustrated and look at me, and you know what, though? They had to use it, and they had to use my key message
Right.
that I wanted to get across. Because if I didn't, because it was the game you had to play. And the pros know that. And if you don't know that, you often end up going, what just happened?
Sure. And you do have a right, if a reporter comes to you and says, would you please talk now, you have a right to say what you want to say.
Right. Or just say no if you don't think it's in your best interest.
Right.
I had a friend say, hey, I want to go on Channel 4. They want me to do something defending guns in the, conservative friend of mine. And in this situation, he's got a job and everything else, but he has a blog. And I said, there's no upside.
Oh, I and it raises the age-old question, why do people agree to be interviewed by 60 Minutes?
Right.
Do you think they're trying to help you?
Right. Or the Colbert Report.
Yeah.
I mean, anybody. And you just look at them and go, but that it's intoxicating to folks. And they think, well, this time they're going to listen to what I have to say.
And they will want me to be in a movie.
Right. Line 3, Michael. Michael, are you there?
All right, how y'all doing?
Doing well, thanks.
All right, well, I'm just calling. I don't care nothing about. I don't care how charismatic Craig Watkins is, as long as he's putting the bad guys in jail and freeing the innocent. He's doing an okay job with me. I don't tell if Toby Shook was elected, he should. If Toby Shook was elected, them same 30 or something guys got out of prison would still be there.
Without question.
Yeah.
Without question. And you're exactly right. And that was when I talked about those messages I tried to say over and over, it was Craig Watkins puts away guilty people and he frees the innocent. And that was what, because that was right. Like you said, fundamentally, that's all you cared about, right?
Yeah, because some of this stuff, could any percentage of this stuff he going through have something to do with that? Because that's something that, I don't know, has it been done? I know it sure as hell ain't been done in Dallas.
I got to offer
I don't know if it's been done anywhere across the country.
I got to offer an additional perspective. I don't think Toby Shook wants guilty people to be in prison.
No, he doesn't. But would he have partnered with the Innocent Project? Yeah. Would he have partnered with the Innocence Project and done what Craig did? No, because he came from the culture. Those people were furious about that downtown, that was going on. Not because they want guilty people in jail, because they believe they didn't put any guilty people in jail.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Thank y'all.
Michael, thank you.
And Toby, by the way, still has my notes from an interview I did with Catherine Shelton 10 years ago that he said he would return. So Toby, if you're listening, you didn't get you took my notes from the Observer and you didn't get your conviction. Drop them off here at KNON.
Eric, may I point out that you've just publicly mentioned your own name in the same sentence with Catherine Shelton. I'm not sure that's a good idea. We were talking about Catherine Shelby. She was the wife of the race car guy, different guy.
Somebody else.
Not Catherine Shelton, the famous one. Anyway, how come Crusoe backed out? Why did Judge Crusoe decide not to run against Watkins in the next election?
I think it was just numbers. I think those numbers I talked about, I think he got some polling back that said this is going to be tougher than you think. The other thing is, I'll tell you how I would have run against Crusoe. I think it would have been real easy. This guy was a Republican.
Yeah.
Now he's a Democrat.
Right.
Hey, base, how do you feel about that? What is he going to be next?
And maybe,
I think that would have been super easy.
Maybe that's what he was looking at.
If there's a belief out there, and these Republican folks in Dallas, they scratch their head. How can Craig not be vulnerable?
Yeah.
How can
Right.
look at Eddie Bernice Johnson? What'd she win with? 80%, 75%.
Right.
And there's this sort of white buttoned up. How can this be?
Why do these black people keep voting for black people?
For black people, I don't understand. Don't they know we mean so well?
Yeah, don't they see us?
Right. And I just sort of laugh at that. The idea that Craig is in trouble with this case in Lena's court, I'm sure there's some seriousness to that. The idea that he is unable to be effective because he's busy fighting all these battles, many of them self-inflicted.
Yeah.
I don't doubt that. Does he have a base of folks who are going to turn out and vote for him because of what he has done and what he stands for, and the fact that that he is seen as someone who does balance the convicting of criminals with making sure that innocent people don't go to jail? Yeah, those folks are going to be there come election day.
Yeah, and if those are the alternatives, and you're the voter, and you're thinking, okay, wait, you got Craig Watkins, who's allied himself with the Innocence Project, really doesn't want innocent people sent up for life, and he's got this inside baseball problems that I don't quite get.
That 8% of the people in Dallas could tell you about.
Yeah, right. It's very inside. So that's my choice, or I get the old white guys back.
Right.
And I think even for a lot of progressive white voters, you say, if that's my choice, give me the guy with the inside baseball problems.
Right. It's not as though these sort of battles weren't going on before Craig got here. These, commissioner court versus DA versus, the newspaper had stories to run. I mean, things were, so they look at it like, well, there's always sort of political infighting. Which poison do I pick? And Craig, again, the things I love about the guy is if he could get across on camera in interviews and in day to day, the passion he felt for what he felt was his mission, which was, he talked about growing up and how he and everyone he knew, they feared police. They feared being brought downtown. And the idea that I will help do what I can to protect you in your neighborhoods from people who are criminals. But at the same time, if you're not, you don't need to fear authority. That's really, really important to him. And let me tell you something, that resonates.
Sure. And I think it resonates with thoughtful people across racial lines. It's not just we need a system that is more just in the view of minorities. But I think a lot of people, when they think about this, realize that the law has to have legitimacy.
Right.
And that if you convince a third or half the community that there is no legitimacy where you're concerned, that if you get in front of us, we're going to do what we feel like.
Right.
And we don't care what you say, and we don't care if you did it.
Yeah. We'll plant fake drugs on you.
Yeah, we think a bunch of you guys just need to be locked up. And I think a lot of reasonable white folks get that is not a formula for the rule of law.
Right.
And so if you have somebody who can help restore the sense of legitimacy, then you start to have people believing in the cops. And there are lots of instances of people in embattled neighborhoods in the city who really need the police to come in. I interviewed a guy once who was rehabbing a house, and he got a license from the city to put all the junk on the curb. And so this is an African American guy, and these two young white cops pull up and just they arrest him for putting stuff on the curb, which is not a criminal offense. He had these intellectually challenged kids working for him. They send them off into the city, walking home. God knows if they're going to find their way. In other words, he was saying to me, I'm begging for police protection all the time in my neighborhood, but the roll of the dice is that they're going to show up and arrest me.
Right.
Because they're stupid and they're racist. And so if you can, to the extent that Watkins represents to people a bridge and a healing of all of that.
And Chief Brown does too, and you know, that makes me feel better about my city. I wish he didn't get involved in all these other things that I think degrade his ability to get that message out.
Yeah, and also, I mean, the big disappointment, just from, maybe this is media inside baseball, but to see the guy with this much promise beyond this office and beyond the city, and man, now we're scaled back to barely surviving.
Yeah, and I think that is also the biggest one of the biggest disappointments for everybody is, you know, he has made it to where, you know, he has closed ranks. His family basically runs his campaigns now, and you know, that makes you feel better because they'll tell you you're doing the right thing, but it's that's not going to help you take care of the flaws in your game to move on.
And we've got some calls coming in, and I'm afraid we're out of time. We're at the end of the show. I'm sorry, but this has been it's been really interesting, Eric, to hear your inside perspective on Watkins and what he's been through. As a last question, let's say he somehow cleans up this contempt of court thing that he's in the Judge Lovario business. Can he repair his fortunes? Can he get back to that promise that he...
Look at what's going on in New York, right?
Well, yeah.
I mean, the great American story is about redemption and about being, you know, and the thing is, it's not as though he's had those level of problems. He's had very inside baseball problems. He can, I believe, still, I think he needs to get people that he trusts, who are outside folks, into his inner circle, into his kitchen cabinet, and who can guide him in the ways that he needs to ignore all these problems. And then, yes, he's a young guy. He's still got a great long career ahead of him if he did those things. Maybe.
New York is different. I think people in New York actually admire people who text pictures of their privates. And it's a different culture. But
well, and I sort of, maybe I'm a New Yorker at heart.
Yeah, right. Don't tell. Let's not get into that, Eric. But this has been a great talk. Jim Schutze and Eric Celeste and our callers here on Get Off My Lawn, talking about Craig Watkins and what's going on with him and what may go on. And we'll see you here again next week, Saturday, 10 a.m. Get Off My
Lawn.
Okay, Get Off My Lawn. And see you then. Bye.
KNON 89.3 FM in Dallas and Fort Worth, the voice of the people.
Business owners, tell KNON's listeners about your business. You can put your business or event on KNON. KNON currently has space available to run announcements for you. Tell KNON's listeners about your goods, services, nightclub, concert, or event. Help keep the voice of the people on the air while putting your information on the air. KNON's been named the #1 radio station in Dallas by both the Dallas Observer and D Magazine. Put your business with Dallas's #1 station. Call now for more information at 214-828-9500, extension 227, or extension 233. For more information, go to KNON.org and click on the Run Spots on KNON page. It's a great way for your business to support community radio while letting more people know about you.